Howdy YouTube. It's me again, your friend Metalcorewolf. And this is a Animal Crossing journal chapter that sort of follows in the footsteps of the previous chapter. We were talking about time last time. And I just wanted to come out here at night. I brought my cot out here. I just sort of wanted to lay down and expand on a few things regarding our last topic, and also just some other extended concepts that I didn't really get to touch on last time. And for this video, we're just gonna gaze at some stars for a bit. So I hope that's okay. We might move around a little bit just to stretch, but for the most part, we'll be here. And so I mentioned gaming as being the main focus of our channel here. And that remains true. And one of the things that comes up often whenever I think about time is skills and how we develop them, and how our lack in skill can sometimes scare us away from having a good time. And what I mean by that is that often we may play all kinds of games, we may try things out, we might, see what we're into, what kind of games we might like, what kind of games we might not like. And I think a big proponent of what our tastes end up being is skill, or somewhat tied to skill. And I often see this with games that are either competitive in nature or require some aspect of execution, whether it be tight controls, difficulty, simple PvP content, hand-eye coordination, the list goes on. And so we all kind of find our genre or our one game that we enjoy playing. Some people might not like high octane, action-packed, split decision making games, and so you might opt for a more relaxed game, something akin to Animal Crossing. We call those cozy games because they help us feel cozy and relaxed and warm. And the skill barrier there, well, there isn't much of a barrier per se. The skill is really just, are you down to relax for X amount of period of time? But what I do appreciate about these types of games, the cozy games, is how much they're willing to help you practice your creativity and sort of let you decorate the space, lets you move things around, kind of like how I brought my cot out here to just sort of stargaze for the sake of this video. And those are good productive time sinks where we get to express ourselves and grow in that area. But now let's say you want to try a different game. Let's say you want to kick it up a notch, let things get a bit more exciting. So you try an action game, maybe something that requires some hand-eye coordination, probably has some combat. And you may find out that the game's pretty hard, and you might not have that hand-eye coordination, or something about it is just not clicking. You're not getting it, right? And you may come out of that experience feeling, well, a little frustrated, a little discouraged, you may feel like you wasted your time. And this is the tie-in to our previous conversation. We don't have, or we don't feel like we have a lot of time, so we're very sensitive to how much time we spend doing things, especially playing new games or games we normally wouldn't touch. Sometimes, you know, we genuinely would love to play a certain type of game because it looks interesting, but knowing how much time it takes to get into the game steers us away. I forgot it does that. Steers us away from the game itself. You know, we may be super interested in this super action-packed, like it can even be a single player game that's like super difficult and requires like, you know, half a second reaction times, but we simply can't put in the time to get good at that game. And oftentimes we put a lot of emphasis on that. We say, well, I'm just not good at this game, or well, I don't have enough time to get better at the game, so I think I'm gonna put it down. And those are all fair opinions, decisions. Like, you're not wrong in doing that or deciding to do that. Like, I'm not saying, oh, you shouldn't avoid games, you should play everything and, you know, have a terrible time. No, that's, if anything, that's the farthest away from the point. I think what's actually something we should pay attention to, if this is the case, I'm not saying everybody is experiencing the same thing, but oftentimes I think as gamers who have limited time, adult gamers who don't have a lot of time to play games, are sometimes afraid of success. And this is something I've experienced, not only in games, but in being creative and doing things and working on this YouTube channel or my Twitch streams, or, you know, anything I might put my creativity towards. And when you hear, you know, afraid of success, you might be asking yourself, or asking me, what does that mean? That doesn't make any sense. How could anybody be afraid of success? Well, if the terminology seems alien to you, that's because, you know, it's kind of like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. You know, you don't want something positive to happen in your life, so you avoid it. That's not exactly what it means, but that's how I'm interpreting it in this situation. And what it actually means is that you, if you're like me, you may not want to put effort towards something because you are not guaranteed the chance of you succeeding or becoming good at said thing. And we oftentimes see this with fighting games. A lot of people see a fighting game and say, wow, the characters in this game look really cool, or the animations look very dope. I like the music of fighting games. You may say you like everything about fighting games, but you still do not want to try them out because it would require a lot of time to learn how to play the game and get good at the game. And I want to challenge that. I want to take a stance and say that shouldn't be what prevents you from playing a fighting game, or any game for that matter. For a while, you know, I was never interested in Dark Souls or any of the Souls games like that. When Dark Souls came out and everybody was talking about it, everybody was raving about, oh, how difficult the game is. Like, it's a very punishing game. Like, man, the getting killed and having to run back to collect your souls, this and that. I remember being like so confused as to why anybody would want to put themselves through that. Like, how is that fun? Why do you have fun losing at a game? Or like, you know, why are you having so much fun with something that's that difficult? And it took me a while, but I realized that, like, if I were to play a game like that and I went into it being like, well, that game's too hard, I'd have to like take time to get good at the game to actually beat it, and I'm not gonna put all that time into that game. Like, why is that fun? Why is grinding fun? And it's not that you're grinding all the time, or rather, like, the fun isn't in the victory. The fun is in the journey of playing the game. And I relate this more to fighting games because we can see a more direct correlation as to what I'm talking about. You may pick up a fighting game for the first time, and you may mash buttons not knowing what you're doing, but you're making progress in the game. You understand what's being asked of you. When you load up Dark Souls for the first time, you don't know what you're doing. You don't have the reaction time needed to defeat said enemies and bosses that so many people have conquered by this point. You don't have any of that, but you are still driven to see it through and spend your time not only learning the game but playing the game. I think something that turns off a lot of people, and I'm going to use fighting games as a big example here because it has so many relatable situations and stories of wanting to get good at a fighting game or any game that requires a good amount of skill, and feeling like, sorry, I keep moving the camera, and feeling like, man, if only I had more time to get better. But that's the thing, it's, you are getting better. By playing the game, you are improving. You just have to pay attention. You have to learn the lessons being given to you. The time you think you could be wasting by learning, you're wasting by not enjoying the game. Let me clarify and organize that thought a bit more. You may think you've reached the end of your skill level. You know, you think you've reached a cap, like, this is as good as I'm gonna get. That's good enough. And I mean, hey, that's fine. You do what you want to do with your free time. But I want to challenge you and say, you shouldn't just settle with that. Part of the enjoyment of any one of these games is mastering it. And then you ask yourself again, yeah, but that takes time. That takes so much time, and there are other games I want to play. Sure. If something else takes priority, something else takes priority. But if you are gonna not even start because of you're already thinking about how much time you have to spend going forward, I think you should think about time a little differently. You can budget your time. You can say, I'm gonna play this much of this game, but if I don't dedicate more time, how do I get better? Well, you're actively always getting better as long as you're paying attention while you're playing a game. I think some of us feel or think that playing a game is just turning your brain off and pressing buttons on a controller or on a keyboard, clicking your mouse aimlessly, and just sort of like vegging out for the sake of like, you know, relaxing. Games should be relaxing, and they should be. I agree. Games should be, you know, something we do to take a load off. But your brain doesn't turn off when you play video games, or at least it shouldn't. Your brain is cognizant of the problem solving and mechanisms happening while you're playing a game. Games are puzzles. They're challenges. They're objectives. They're actively asking you to do something in order to progress. If you were to actually turn your brain off while you were playing a game, you wouldn't be doing anything. You wouldn't be controlling your character. You wouldn't be progressing. You wouldn't be having fun. The fun of games is overcoming challenges or getting lost in the world and the story. It's sort of like if you were to read a book but not actually look at the pages you're reading. You just sort of stare at the letters and wait for something to happen. That's what people think gaming is when you're, you know, doing it casually, quote unquote. That's a big, like, underlying quote unquote casually playing games, is that you're not playing the game and that you're just pushing buttons for the fun of it. And I kind of want to say that, like, I don't think that's how we should look at it. I don't think there's anything wrong with playing games casually. Or rather, I think there's something wrong with how we think they should be played casually. I think we should be more active in our thinking and realize that games require our attention. And the best way to enjoy them is to be actively there and thinking about what we're doing. You know, we may get like stuck on a boss or a level and we might get frustrated and be like, why can't I beat this level? Why am I having such a hard time? And sometimes we do the sort of like opposite effect by telling ourselves, well, I did it well the first time because I wasn't thinking about it. I haven't seen this boss before, or like I haven't studied their patterns, and I did so well, so I'm just gonna not think about it and go in swinging. And sometimes that makes the second attempt worse than the first. And it's sort of like, it feels like reverse psychology a little bit. But really it's like, it just takes a little bit of cognizance and thinking thoroughly about what you're actively doing. And I think in wanting to play games casually, not have them be such like a intensive mental Olympics of like, oh, this is so hard and frustrating, like I'm not relaxed right now. And some people might get frustrated by that. But the fun is in figuring it out. The fun is in sort of getting lost in the sauce and just having a good time, whether you're winning or losing. You know, the winning feels great, but the losing is the stepping stones towards your victory, your eventual victory, overcoming said challenge, said game. And you may think this is, you know, something you only experience with action games or games with combat and stuff like that. But in Animal Crossing, or rather games that don't really have any combat or any sort of like major challenges, well, the time being spent here is sort of like planning ahead and sort of keeping track of all your responsibilities, being cognizant of like what's going on, we can just like run around the island and sort of like get lost and like not think about anything. But we can also be deliberate about what we do in the game. We can think and plan and say to ourselves, I'm gonna catch this mini fish, or I'm gonna look for this particular bug, or I'm gonna create this project with all this furniture and make things look pretty. We can even like talk to the villagers and like pay attention to what they have to say. Let's talk is always a good option. Someone said we could set our furniture up anywhere we like. Oh, except for in the plaza. Thinking of putting together an outdoor gym. What do you think? If you've got an idea you think will get everyone pumped, don't hold back. And oftentimes the villagers, you know, it may feel like they have generic tips to share, but we can be cognizant of like, you know, what they're trying to tell us. We were just told that like we should let our ideas sort of guide us and move us forward. And that's the best way, or the best usage of your time, is just going for it. Stop thinking about, oh, how much do I need to dedicate to this thing in order to start enjoying it? Oh, I wish I could play these kinds of games, but they're just too difficult or too time consuming in order to learn. There's no time being consumed. You just play the game and you learn by playing. Mash buttons. Run into, you know, unwavering difficulty. Like just try things out. Just play games. Don't worry about like, oh, do I have time? Is this game gonna take too long? Who cares? You're spending time thinking about that instead of like actually playing the game. And if you have a different game that you'd rather play, then play that. That's okay too. If you want to play the same game over and over again, you know, like you have that one game, your go-to, and you're happy with that game, like you are genuinely booting up the game and having a good time. Ask yourself, for real, are you having fun playing that game? And if you are, cool. Why change that? As long as you know that that's how you want to spend your game time, you know, your video game time on said thing, then you're Gucci. You don't need to be worrying about, oh man, but I wish I could play this other game. Then play that other game. Play whatever you want. You have that level of freedom. We get caught up with like, there's too many games. There's too many games to play. When am I going to find the time to play them all? Don't worry about all of the games. Worry about the game that you want to play at this very moment. You've got some free time? Cool. Play that one game. See if you like it, see if you don't, see if you vibe with it, maybe do a few sessions. You know, you might feel differently about a certain game 2 days later after you've tried it the first time. You may play for an hour and be like, I don't know how I feel about that game. You might come back to it a few days later and be like, oh, okay, I think I get it now. You look at it with fresh eyes. And I know there's, you know, I can't talk about quote unquote wasting your time on a game without talking about quote unquote, I've wasted my money on this game. That might just have to be a topic for another day. And look, there's not much I can say about the financial side of it, except, you know, games can be part of your budget. You can budget for games. But I don't want you to worry about every single minute that that game is going to offer in exchange for its price tag. Because then you're going to spend your time with the game for the wrong reasons. You're going to be focused on, am I having fun? Is there enough content in this game? Like, was it too long? Was it too short? Etc, etc. Rather than just playing the game and enjoying it and getting better at it and finding new things by just being present. I think as a gamer in this landscape right now, we need to be more present in the games that we play instead of just idling by and playing games for the sake of like playing them rather than enjoying games for the sake of self-fulfillment and pleasure and enjoyment. Don't just settle. Spend your time actively and do the things that enrich your life. This can be any hobby. If you were into reading books and you just like read books for the sake of reading books and you didn't actually like retain any of the stories that you read, then are you really reading books? Can you actually talk about the things you've done in certain games? Can you retell the feelings you felt when you got to a certain point of said game? Because that's how I feel like it should feel. I want to remember the games that I play. And a lot of us do. I'm not making this big claim that all gamers today are so spoiled. They don't appreciate the craftsmanship, etc, etc. No. I'm simply saying I think we can do a better job at enjoying ourselves. I think we might have forgotten what having fun is like. And, you know, obviously I'm talking to the older generation of gamers, adult gamers, so sorry if you're just now starting your adventure into this hobby and you're like, what is he talking about? Of course I know how to have fun. Yes, there is a lot of fun in novelty, things that are new to you, which is I think something we also obsess about in the gamer landscape, world, community, whatever you want to call it. We focus so hard on wanting a game to be worth it. We want it to be so fun. We want it to rekindle that inner child, that feeling we got from playing a game for the first time, blind, without any spoilers, without any outside influence. We want to play a game and come out of it feeling like, wow, that changed me. And I think a big thing that we're not paying attention to is that we've experienced that already. We already have that knowledge, that memory. Why would we want to replace it? Why do we need more time on something we've already spent our time on? I kind of lost the thread there a little bit, but what I'm trying to say is, as somebody who has spent most of their life playing video games, why do I care so much that they change me? Why don't I just have fun the way I know how to? By just playing games as they are, as they were intended to be, and not worry or stress about the little details. And I'm honestly very curious about what people have to say regarding anything I've said during this video. I know I'm still getting the hang of doing a scriptless, doing a no script type long form video series. But if you're wondering what I'm asking of you, this is the question. Do you feel like you worry about the little details a bit too much when you're playing video games? Like, am I spending too much time on this game? Is this game too long, too short, too cheap, too expensive, too hard, too easy? Or do you legitimately enjoy playing video games without thinking about all these outside factors and simply being present and cognizant of what you're doing, which should be having fun? Let me know in the comments. And I'll have another Animal Crossing journal coming right to your inbox. That wasn't an outro. That I can't cut that out either. This is supposed to be uncut, so I think this is just it. This is the end of the video. I have nothing else to say. But I suppose just keep your chin up, do some stargazing, and remember, don't stress about the little details. Just enjoy yourself. Have a good time. Play the games you want to play. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.